Hello, hello, hello.
Take their seats. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to start in a couple of minutes.
Dr. Asir Jawahar Thomas Johnsingh, also known as A.J.T. Johnsingh to his dear ones, was a conservation stalwart whom we miss. People who knew him cherished his hearty smile, tight handshake, and an incredible field wisdom every time he met them. Inspired by Jim Corbett, A.J.T. Johnsingh pursued a career in field biology so that he could spend time in the forests he loved. Throughout his life, he trained scores of young biologists and wildlife managers. In an interview with conservation magazines, he had said, I used to ask questions about wildlife that no one could answer. So I began to search for answers myself by observing animals. In my view, curiosity is the greatest trigger for good science. Dr. Johnsingh was associated with WWF India as a science advisor for nearly 2 decades. Colleagues who accompanied him on field trips recall his vivid knowledge of fieldcraft and the way he took care of everyone who were with him. His students also remember his fondness for fly fishing during the field trips. We at WWF India joined the entire wildlife community in mourning the demise of Dr. Johnson as we unite here to celebrate his contributions to the field of ecology and conservation. Dr. Johnson's work is unparalleled, and his influence as a naturalist and mentor will continue to inspire our future generations.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is not a mourning, rather, it's a celebration of the life of Dr. A.J.T. Johnsingh, an ecologist who touched all our lives. It's incredible the number of papers, publications, and stories that he told us. So I think pretty much everyone in this room has either read something he's written or heard a story from him. I'd like to call upon Mr. Ravi Singh, the CEO and Secretary General of WWF to give the welcome address. Please, sir.
Thank you everyone for being here. This mine is not really a welcome address. It's we are here for a serious and a somber occasion. I'd just like to say a few words and reminisce a bit about Dr. Johnsingh. A lot of you who are here remember him as a teacher, a mentor, and he was particularly close to us in WWF because he was part of us, and we always thought of him as a guide, as a person who we could go to in the event of any scientific inquiry or anything that we needed in terms of our own understanding that we were missing. I remember the first few conversations I had with him many years ago when he was in WII. And it needs to be said here, and I will say it now because there may not be many occasions for this. When he parted company with his institution, he was not happy. And I felt very much, although we were not in a position completely to do many things at that time, I felt very much that a person of his standing and his service and his knowledge of India, in India, be subjected to, a severance from his own institution, which in the long run will be difficult for him to assimilate and understand. From that time onwards, we put him on a retainership for our work, whether we used him or not, which I must say that we continued to end of his days. I don't know how much it helped. I'm sure it did. But he was always ready for us and for everybody else to stand up to a commitment that we had taken to ensure that we would meet the objectives, always ready for us to go into action, even if we found time very difficult. There was a conflict with a particular tigress in the Nilgiris. And that area, the schools, the tea gardens were shut for a period of 10 days or 2 weeks or something like that. And I requested him, I said, you better go there because I think people need someone to be as a center so that you could coordinate this. He went across. And he did manage to understand what the situation was. And in such a way that the tigress was tranquilized and taken out safely without any loss of life. And then normal operations ensued in that landscape. There are many examples like this. And his understanding of anticipative management, which we learn in the corporate sector, part of business, but he was doing it instinctively in his area of work, which is greatness. I always thought that even when he was in his last days, we never thought of it in that sense, but when he was not well after his stroke, that we could always try and see if he could keep his spirit up, stay alive. He was reading. He would talk to people about various things that were important. I called him on some matter. I said, look, would you like to write this forward or something like that for a book? So he said, Mr. Ravi Singh, I'm 80 years old now. And it's difficult for me to write and revise. And I said, look, that's exactly why I'm asking you, because his was a different attitude to things. I remember very clearly going out in the field, walking with him in Page and Kanha, that corridor. 2 days. We walked 42 kilometers. It was like walking in a classroom, and everything was visible. It's interpreted according to his understanding of science and knowledge. And I was just telling Mike that his understanding, although academic, scientific, was that of a teacher, but was very earthy. It was given to you without aggression or being assertive, and very much depended on the quality and the understanding of the receiver. This is important in a teacher. I was taking the example of teachers of mine who taught us in college, and they had the same attitude, huge amount of knowledge. They would digest it and give it to you in a way that you could digest it too. And the two books that he wrote, on mammals of India, the 2 volumes, they are, in my view, the best compendium of mammals that you can read. One either read Prater in the old days, and many copies thereof, many kind of things, but then you have a comprehensive understanding of what he did, chapter by chapter. One has to read that particular book. And that is my go-to, as it is for many of you, go-to books. One thing I'd say that in our time, we have seen many people who we read about, who were there, passed on. Some of us just about heard or we read about the time of Jim Corbett. And thereafter, the person who knew him as well, of course, Johnsingh knew him too, was Colonel John Wakefield, who some of you know as Papa John. And the third person who was bridging this entire time was Billy Arjun Singh. Jim Corbett and Billy were, in my view, both sons of the Tarai, who knew the Tarai well, understood this, and the dynamics and all that. John knew the Tarai well, but in a different way, because he worked there for a timber company sometime near Bijnor. And before he went down south and with Tiger Tops and others, he took over that entire area. In a way, Johnsingh sort of straddled this. Dr. Johnsingh straddled this entire area because he knew areas by landscape after landscape after landscape. He too was influenced a lot by the Tarai, being based in Rajaji and near the Rajaji in WII, and of course his entire amount of, he walked almost the entire length of the Tarai at one time, and wrote about it. And I've had a lot of conversations with him, personal conversations, general ones. I'm searching for knowledge, and he was the person who would give it to me. He'd come and stay with us quite some time. And it was great for us to have him on his team and to know and understand and see the world through his eyes. And of course, me and my team, we talk about this often. We'll miss him a lot. Yeah. Because of his interest and his letters and his reviews and his guidance. I mean, I go to some fairly remote parts of India sometimes, and the influence of Dr. Johnsingh is there in the people who are managers or people who are working, or students, teachers, whatever. So this is one of those who was one of the great contributors to our country, and known both in India and outside India, and known both for knowledge as well as the fearlessness with which you are imparting this knowledge. And we thought it'd be fitting to have this here, to have conservationists and people, my team, others, old friends, to be part of this. And we pass on our condolences and best wishes to the family. We think at some stage we will discuss with some of you, of course, with Mike and family entirely, to do something in Dr. Johnsingh's honor, in an area or landscape, which we have been, by the way, trying to do for people who we've been associated with, not entirely successful because of the complications some of these things have. In every case, but where we've tried, we've somehow managed to make a mark. And we'd like to do the same thing for Dr. Johnsingh as well. Maybe some of it will come up in the discussions and conversations that will follow in the coming days. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for coming here. And I think we have a few speakers going forward. Who do I pass on to? Are you going to do that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I remember Mr. Singh telling me that Dr. Johnsingh had a combination of insight and foresight with a lot of practical knowledge, which really helped WWF with its conservation landscape work. I'd like to call upon Dr. Bivash Pandav now. He's a professor at the Wildlife Institute of India and has worked with Dr. Johnsingh for a long time to please remember him and share his remembrances with us.
Good evening. So Dr. Johnsingh retired from Wildlife Institute in 2005. And the day he retired, if I remember correctly, it was 30th June 2005. And on 29th June, we were surveying the border area in Tarai East Forest Division, adjoining Nepal. So I had to tell him, sir, you are retiring tomorrow. You have to go and get the retirement benefits. Okay. So normally at the institute, when we retire, they give us a check and all your pension benefits and other things. So he was very reluctant to go because we were in the company of John Seidensticker and Mr. A.S. Negi, the former Chief Wildlife Warden of Uttarakhand, myself and Mahendra Srestha. That time Save the Tiger Foundation was there. So three of us were there, four of us were there. And Dr. Johnsingh was very reluctant to go back to Dehradun. So somehow managed to push him and he went to Dehradun, left in the night, reached Dehradun in the morning, got retired on 30th of June. And afternoon he was back. Afternoon in the sense late night because it takes 7-8 hours drive from Dehradun. We were staying in Tanakpur. So he was back in Tanakpur in the night. Then we went on and visited Sukla Phanta. So this was in 2005. Just a year after that, in 2006, sir was associated with WWF-India. So decided to walk the Nandur landscape. So we started from Dehradun early in the morning, very early in the morning, around 4 o'clock in the morning, in one Toyota, before Innova, this Qualis was there, Toyota Qualis. So you went in a Toyota Qualis. So we drove from Dehradun to Bhimtal. Nowadays it takes only 4 hours, but those days it took around 8 to 9 hours to reach Bhimtal. But the real drive started after Bhimtal. So Bhimtal, we drove along Gola River to Okalkanda. And from Okalkanda, we went to a forest rest house called, in a place called Kala Agar. So Kala Agar is the place where Corbett writes in Chowgad Man-Eater. So from the Kala Agar rest house, there is a big rock which is visible on the hill slope and he sees the tiger sitting on the rock. So next day morning, we went and saw the rock. Then we went to two small lakes on the hill called Lohatal, Haristal and Lohakamtal. So these two, there are a lot of goldfishes in those two, I won't say lakes, the big reservoir kind of thing. So that day we came back and stayed again. We spent 2 nights in Kalagar rest house. So next day we walked down to a village called Banolia. From Banolia, we went to another place, another village called Doba. These are the places where Corbett shot 3 man-eaters. Chogad man-eater, Chuka man-eater, and Talades man-eater. So the setting of these 3 man-eaters are from that landscape. So from Doba, we started descending down. Doba is the village where headwater of Nandur. Nandur origins from there. And then we walked around 15-20 kilometers to Chorgalia, Durga People rest house. So Durga People Rest House, we spent a night in Durga People Rest House. I remember Dr. Padma Mohanty is here. She will be talking about the film that's coming up. But in Durga People, 2022, when the film was being made, Dr. Johnsingh was there sitting in the Durga People Rest House. A close friend of mine, Udayveer, he asked Dr. Johnsingh, what is that you, given a choice, where do you want to live? He told, this is the place, Durga People. He was very fond of Durga People Forest Rest House. So next day, we are walking from Durga People to Chorgalia. It's a 40-kilometer long walk along the Nandur River. So when we were walking, we saw one fellow carrying two truck tubes. Okay. And the tubes were filled. I didn't know what was there inside the tube. Then the forest guards, they knew what is there inside the tube. So then they immediately went and caught hold of this fellow. He was a Nepali laborer, and he was carrying these two tube full of whatever there inside. And then the guard came and quietly told me, "Sir, isko pakadna padega. Iske andar daru hai." So those days, Nandur was notorious for Raisiks. They were that entire landscape was notorious for Raisiks were going and hunting sambar there, and they were brewing liquor. So when they told liquor, so I, by the way, I am a teetotaler, so I'm not fond of liquor. So I immediately took out my Swiss knife with the scissors. I started cutting one tube. So whatever liquor was there in one tube came out. When I started approaching the second tube, the forest guard came and held my hand. Told, no, 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 sir, don't do this. We have to walk 40 kilometers today. Okay. So we reached Chorgalia rest house, and Chorgalia I went and bought some nice mutton from Chorgalia town. So we had lovely mutton curry, and of course the forest guard and all, they were very tired. So people did justice to that other tube full of liquor. And then from Chorgalia next day, we walked to Jolasan. So what I want to say, we walked around 65, 70 kilometers in those 3 days, and we didn't come across a single tiger pug mark in that area. Dr. Johnsingh was very disturbed and very worried. Raisiks have finished everything. People have hunted all the sambar. Sambar is gone, tiger is gone. Okay. So probably sambar was both the sambar that we eat and the sambar that's there in our jungle were the two of his favorite things in his life. He always, there was no conversation that went without mention of sambar and Chilla corridor. Okay, I'll come to Chilla corridor in a bit. So 70 kilometer, more than 70 kilometer, we walked in 3 days, and specifically looking for tiger signs, we didn't come across a single tiger pug mark. And today, I'm talking, this is in 2006. Today in 2024, there are more than 60 tigers in that area. Okay, that's made a remarkable recovery. Dr. Johnsingh always spoke about it. A lot of people have contributed towards saving tiger, including WWF-India. They have come forward and saved that tiger. I'm sure Dr. Johnsingh, 2022, when we went, we came across Tusker, we came across a lot of tiger signs. He was very happy to be in that area. The other thing about Dr. Johnsingh, you give him, ask him to talk, say, for example, about one expedition in Alaska, but somehow Chilla Motichur corridor will feature in the talk. Okay, so he will bring Chilla Motichur corridor into his talk. It has to come, even if it is totally unrelated subject. So for 30 years, he spoke about Chilla Motichur corridor, and 2000, I guess it was around 2000. It took more than 30 years. 1984, he joined Wildlife Institute, and I joined Wildlife Institute in 1991. So from the very first day, he has been taking us to that area, talking about Chilla Motichur corridor. Took more than 30 years for that corridor, that problem in the corridor to be addressed to a large extent, not completely, but to a large extent, the problem to be addressed. Again, this organization, WWF India, has played a key role. Two more persons associated with this organization, Mr. Ashok Kumar, who was associated with WWF India from the very beginning, and Mr. P.K. Sen, and Dr. Johnsingh. Three of them were extremely vocal about this Chilla Motichur corridor. Today, there is a 800-meter flyover. I remember when the negotiations were going on, he was fighting for 1200-meter corridor. Okay, and he was very frustrated that the Uttarakhand government and the National Highway Authority of India was not willing to come up with a 1200-meter animal underpass in that area. So, but finally, a 800-meter flyover exists there, Chilla Motichur corridor. After many, many years of that animal underpass being built, tigers have started crossing over. from Eastern Rajaji to Western Rajaji. 2022, when Dr. Johnsingh came, he was 23 actually. Last time he visited us was in 23 March. He was very happy to see the progress that's happening, but he still kept telling that we need to plant certain tree species like Holoptilia integrifolia, the casters we need to plant in the corridors, in the islands in Ganga, so that provide ample cover for animals to cross. The lesson that we have learnt is 30 years constantly he kept talking about Chilla-Motichur corridor. We have to, the litmus test for India's conservation is establishment of Chilla-Motichur corridor. So he never gave up. And finally, Chilla-Motichur corridor has come into existence. So Dr. Johnsingh always used to say, I would quote 2-3 things that he used to tell us all the time. Normally, and nowadays, especially when you take students and officer trainees, students somehow they listen because very meek characters. But when we take in-service officer trainees, they will never carry a notebook and pen. Maximum, if you insist, they will take out their notepad or phone and they start typing something, pretending that whatever we are saying, they are listening and they are taking a note of it. So Dr. Johnsingh, for them, he used to ensure that everyone writes this line first. The faintest ink is much more stronger than the most powerful memory. Okay, so every officer trainee, every student who undergoes field training at Wildlife Institute, he ensured that people first write this in their notebook so that writing becomes a habit. The other thing that Dr. Johnsingh used to say regularly is again from Chilla-Motichur corridor, that conservation is a war, and we have to fight many battles in this war. And in this process of fighting many battles, we win some and we lose some. But the moment you stop fighting, you lose everything. Okay. So he fought, not only for India's wildlife, not only for this. I'm talking about at the ground level, he fought for Chilla-Motichur corridor and he made it happen. Okay. He spoke about Gola River corridor. Ravi Singh sir is there. So all of us have witnessed the things that Gola corridor has gone through. It is beyond repair, but who knows? Nothing is impossible. One day Gola corridor may be restored and the entire the integrity of the Tarai will be maintained, and that will be the fitting tribute to Dr. Johnsingh. Even maintaining the integrity of the corridor, not letting any corridor go or being used by wildlife, not being used by wildlife, will be the best tribute that we can give to Dr. Johnsingh, and we are trying to do that. All of us are trying to do that. So Ravi Singh Saab just told that the mammals of South Asia is a wonderful compilation that is available on mammals of this region. Dr. Johnsingh is no longer with us, but the best is yet to come. His book, Mammals of India, unfortunately, I also couldn't complete it when I was in BNHS. BNHS is publishing it now. I couldn't, I was very keen that the book should be published, but the artist, the painter was taking a lot of time. But the book has got some amazing plates. Believe me, I have not come across such wonderful illustrations in my life or in any book yet. There is a very young artist from Ahmedabad, Chirag Thumbar. So he has finished all the plates. The book is now in press. Orient Longman is publishing it. So Mammals of India, the best from Dr. Johnsingh will very soon come out. Sir is no longer with us, but we have to wait for his best contribution or best book that's going to come out very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pandav. Looking forward to seeing that book you're talking about. I'd like to now invite Shri B.C. Chaudhary, who is a former professor of the Wildlife Institute of India, old friend of Dr. Johnsingh, to please share some memories with us. Thank you.
Good evening. I think this is to celebrate Johnsingh. I think, what comes to my mind is when did I first know him? Okay. This was, to be exact, in 1979. That was a long time back. And that was the time when everyone knew of an incident which happened of an forest officer being killed by an elephant, where actually Johnsingh started his wonderful work on dholes. But this is one thing which Johnsingh always avoided to talk about, even discuss about it. Okay, he said, well, there are some things best remain kept secret. You know, why it happened, how it happened. And he said it was not necessarily someone's fault or someone's arrogance or whatever, but finally the elephant had the last say. Okay, but he always avoided talking about it. And that's when I used to ask about this incident, and he said, BC, it is best not discussed. Okay. 1984, he joined the institute. I also joined the institute around the same time. And then he said, we are now in an institute where we are going to bring out the featured custodians of the wildlife conservation in this country. So we have a major role to play. Okay. And this was something which we will keep on reminding. It's not important for us to realize that we are faculty at the Wildlife Institute. You must realize we are going to bring out the future generation of conservationists of this country. So that's something which we kept on talking all the time. Which reminds me, the first incidents of training forest officials, extremely senior forest officials in Bandipur Tiger Reserve, that was probably should be somewhere around 1986, 86. The officer in charge of that was Kishore Rao, and Johnsingh was the technical scientific deputy. Mr. Pawar was the director of the institute, was also there. I was, being the youngest faculty, I was kind of, facilitate the whole thing. So the Johnsingh told me, the inaugural was one of those ice-breaking event, which continued till 2 o'clock in the night. And the next morning, Johnsingh actually declared at 3 o'clock, 4:30, we are going out into the field, which was kind of a shock to almost all the senior officers. But he said, BC, it is your duty to make people get up at 4:30. Okay. And they're all chief conservator of forest and so on. So I said, how do I do that? So the person who used to go and wake people up with a cup of tea, I told them, you give the first cup of tea at 4:30. I know all of them will say, keep the teacup outside and don't wake us up. 15 minutes later, you go with the second cup of tea. So me and Johnsingh, we kind of decided we will make it such a way they have to get up. And this was not for one day. Of a 1 week program, this kept on happening for 3 days. On the third day, most officers realized they cannot escape that. They have to get up at 4:30 and they have to come back around 6:30 back after the birding trip and so on. But the best part of that came on the last day of the 7-day program. He was very fond of, enjoying the work, but at the end of any event, he would always enjoy a good laugh, nice jokes and so on. And he said, okay, let's enjoy some jokes. So one of the officer who was a participant, he said, okay, I'm going to talk about some jokes. He said, okay, someone died and went to St. Peter. And St. Peter said, what were you? So he said, I was a vice chancellor. So he said, all right, you have suffered enough, so you go to heaven. So the fellow next to him, he went to the St. Peter with a smile in his face. So he said, but why are you smiling? He said, sir, I know my destiny. I know my destination. I said, how come? I was vice chancellor for 2 terms. Oh, you are used to it. You go back to hell. Then Johnsingh raised his hand. I will continue. But one of the officers said, sir, before you, I will continue. So the officer went. He said, sir, the third person who came, he said, sir, I am a forest officer. I was a forest officer. He said, go back to Johnsingh's training program. Okay. So it was interesting, but that's the way Johnsingh was. And then we used to go, our training programs used to be for 21, 22, almost a month-long event. And very often we will hire a bus and travel. We were in Gujarat. Okay. One of the first destinations was the bird sanctuary very close to Ahmedabad. And that year, the bird sanctuary was completely bone dry and our vehicle got stuck. We were heading to one of the beds, possibly looking for the wildlife coming into the bird sanctuary. And everyone thought, okay, the vehicle is stuck, so we have a field day. We don't have to go anywhere. But Johnsingh said, we are walking. The vehicle will take its time to come. So he made every one of us walk for next 5 kilometers onto the bed. We did complete our work, and we came back late in the evening. Till then, that point of time, the vehicle was not up. The vehicle has to be pulled up by using tractors and so on. But he said, once we have fixed up a program for the day, come what may, we must complete it. So I think I'm just telling about the resolve of getting up at 4:30, going back into the field and completing the work and so on. But there are also interesting bits of lesson once you learn living with Johnsingh. Johnsingh was extremely fond of angling. There was a picture of Johnsingh angling. But every time I had gone with him for angling, I remember Ashok Singh was the field director of the project Tiger in Corbett. And every time you go to Corbett, you will find Ashok Singh actually fishing. And that was also one of the reasons Johnsingh will say, we will go and so we will also get a chance to fish. But every time we have gone there, now Johnsingh will say, we will go and fish in an area, not inside the Tiger Reserve, but just outside. Every time I have gone with him, we have never caught a fish. But every time we will go, we will spend 3-4 hours. And I will ask Johnsingh, so many times we have gone there, we spend 4 hours, but we never catch a fish. They said, BC, if you are in the wildlife conservation, learn to be patient. You cannot catch fish, but just be patient that maybe the next hour the fish will come. So that was one lesson I remember still now. What Johnsingh told me, if you are going to work in wildlife, be patient, be patient, be patient. Okay. But the best part of Johnsingh was the sense of humor. The sense of humor. Johnsingh was always envious of people with good hair on their head, for obvious reasons. So we were in Gujarat, and again I think some problem with our vehicles. So we were stuck in Gandhidham. We had to stay in Gandhidham, and what can we do? The officer trainees will say, "Sir, you are not even allowing us to half a day of free time. At least we have to wash our underclothes." So he said, all right, the vehicle got stuck, so you have one complete day to wash your underclothes. So he went out and I said, okay, Johnsingh, I'm going to go and have a haircut. So Johnsingh said, okay, I will also come. So he went to a haircut salon and I took one chair and he took one chair and we had completed our haircut. And then the person said, the owner of the salon said, sir, 25 rupees for each of you. So Johnsingh said, he has a head full of hair, 25 rupees. I have no hair, and you are still charging me 25 rupees. So the fellow said, sir, but it was very difficult to search one after other. But anyway, but Johnsingh told me, hey, BC, don't tell this to anybody in the class. This should remain a secret. So that became a good part of bargaining power for me. I said, Johnsingh, if you don't give us a rest for tomorrow, I'm going to tell this joke to everybody. Okay. But that was the fun part of it with Johnsingh. But almost every trip we have taken, there was always something to learn. The serious part of it is the next thing what needs to be done, the next thing what needs to be taught. He was not a very serious believer of examination system. he always used to say, this examination marking is not a good thing. Let us assume, let us learn how much the people have learned from what they have gone through their training process by the work they have done. But he also used to say, the most mischievous people in the classroom will turn out to be the most serious wildlife managers. And to a large extent, what he said was true. To many of the really, really good wildlife managers whom we see, they have been very difficult in the classroom because they cannot be kept in the four. He used to say, a serious wildlifer can never be kept within the four wall of a classroom. So I think the mischievous ones, they always want to be outside the classroom, and therefore I believe they are the best ones. So there are tiny, tiny bits of information, but today when he's not there, my association with him from 1984, the last I met him was about a year and a little more than a year in Corbett, April, precisely to be that. We have taken lots of pictures and we have shared that with him. And the people with whom he has worked in Smithsonian, who are still in touch with me. I have sent information about his passing away. They still write mails to me. Whatever I receive from any sources, I pass it on to Mike. And it has been, I consider it has been a privilege to have been with Johnsingh for this length of time. There are many, many things, with this long association, but I just thought maybe a few humorous ones and a few serious ones to share with you is something, the opportunity I got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, PC. That was really lovely. I'd now like to call upon Prakriti Srivastav ma'am. She was the Principal Chief Conservator of Forests of Kerala. And she was interestingly DIG at the Ministry of Environment and Forests when Dr. Johnsingh was in the National Board for Wildlife at a time when the NBWL was very active and very vocal. Please, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity for me to share a few instances or my experience with Dr. Johnsingh. Mine was a very short interaction, actually, when I was DIG Wildlife. Though the interaction without knowing him otherwise was very long because we were students, we were part of the IGNFA, and we had to read the textbooks, and he was a name to reckon with as far as wildlife was concerned. So that's where it started from, that where I read about him, I read about his work, and we were all inspired by it. But my personal interaction happened when I was DIG Wildlife. And it was at that time that the National Board of Wildlife was reconstituted. And he naturally was a member of the larger NBWL. But then he was also selected, or he was appointed as one of the standing committee members. And that was a very, enriching experience, because I was one of the fortunate people being DIG Wildlife who made that call to him and said that you are being appointed as a member of the standing committee, and he was very happy to be a part of it. So that was my first experience with him. And then after that, when the committee was formulated and it started meeting, it was my personal experience that I was hearing such big names in wildlife conservation to be speaking about conservation and about wildlife. And it had a real influence on me to hear them speak. And it really enriched me and made me grow as a person committed towards conservation and wildlife. And I then remember that Dr. Johnsingh took up certain issues in the committee, which were so good and showed that it was not just about certain specific species that he was concerned, but in general about conservation. One of the topics that he took up, that he spoke about in the meeting was about the lakes of Chennai and how they were drying up. And I was, in fact, very amazed, because we always thought of him as a person who was very those big species and charismatic species specific. But here he was talking about the lakes of Chennai. And even though it was not one of the agenda on the committee, he talked about it and he spoke so passionately about it. And everyone listened so patiently and so happily about it, even though there was no decision that could be taken in that committee. That is something which really sticks in my mind, and how he was concerned about conservation also. He also talked to me once personally about his visit to Sikkim and how the ecology of Sikkim was so good, and how we need to conserve it, and why what are the issues involved. And that is something that that discussion also really holds in my memory very well. And the other part of it is that most of the committee members would call me personally and ask me the inside story about what is the agenda and exactly what was the stand of the MOEF. And that, in fact, gave me a really a great insight of all our members who were part of the committee as to how they thought about conservation. And again, Dr. Johnsingh would also call me and tell me and share his experience or share his inputs as to what he thought about that particular agenda that was being placed and how we needed to actually address it. And and that helped me a lot in formulating how we would write our note and put it up as to what was the viewpoint of the ministry. So that was such a nice part of interacting with him and learning from him, on a one-to-one basis, and not just from classrooms or books that we were reading about what he had written. So these are the basic things. And one more point that I really want to share about how he inspired a whole generation, or maybe 2-3 generations of wildlifers and conservationists, and how even behind when he was not there, how people spoke about him and how highly they regarded him. And I think this particular gathering is just a testimony to that, as to what regard people had for his caliber and his commitment, and of how people learned from him. So that's what I'd like to share. And really, it's very nice to have organized this small commemoration. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll shortly be joined by Supriya Sahu, who's the Additional Chief Secretary of Tamil Nadu. I think she'll be here in 2 minutes, but might I call on Mrs. Padma Mohanty, who's the DIG of the MOEF Regional Office of Odisha. She also is involved in this wonderful film, which looks at many areas in the Tarai and tiger sightings, tiger conflict areas, which Dr. Johnsingh worked on. So, ma'am, can you please come up and say a few words? And after she speaks, we'll be showing you the trailer of the film, which she has worked on, ma'am.
गुरु ब्रह्मा गुरु विष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वर Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Nama. In our Indian culture, we equate our Guru with Param Brahma, the God. And I think Dr. Johnsingh was a Guru to thousands of wildlifers, conservationists, forest officials, me included. And talking on this occasion takes me back to my association with him 20 odd years ago. I think I saw him first in LBSNA where we were undergoing our training, and Manoj Nair in the Wildlife Club had invited him for a talk. And it was just mesmerizing. The way he spoke about the langur, the way he walked the talk was wonderful. And I think that's the first time I saw him, and a couple of times in IJNFA. Until I joined 2004, I joined the diploma training in WIA. And I was then just married, I think, and I was still not out of the Odia traditional gears of wearing a lot of bangles and sindoor. I still do. So, and I think I didn't catch Dr. Johnsingh's attention much until we climbed the Chandrashila. And it was 2 Nepalese, 2 Bhutanese, me, Richa, Nidhi, my batchmates from the 2001 batch of Indian Forest Service, Dr. Adhikari, Dr. Johnsingh, and 2 of officer trainees from Sri Lanka. And it was a difficult trek. And only these many of us out of a batch of 28 were ready to climb Chandrashila. And when we got down after, after this whole day, very difficult trek, I think he started noticing me. And once in the T junction of the WII, he met my husband, Tanmay, my better half. And Tanmay, at that point of time, he had left his corporate job and he was back in Bhubaneswar trying to set up his business in media and thinking what to do. And while thinking what to do, he was making documentary films. So when we met Dr. Johnsingh, I introduced Tanmay to him. Then Dr. Johnsingh casually spoke, "What do you do?" Then he said, "I make documentary films." Then he said, "Why don't you make one on the book I'm writing?" That was way back in 2004, December, to be very precise. Then Tanmay said, "Okay, yeah, we can think about it." And then we discussed, but I think in the way of go of life, we forgot all about it. And 20 odd years later, in 2020, when I came back to the regional office of the MOEFCC in Bhubaneswar, I was going through, it was all lockdown, 2020, the first phase of COVID. And personally, as well as professionally, I was going through a very bad phase. My father-in-law was detected with cancer. My husband was very sick. He was admitted in the ICU. And I was professionally also, I had a very bad patch. So one day I was removing my cartons, the Agarwal packers, and then suddenly from a book, I think the field days, some handouts start dropping. And I picked up those handouts. Those are Dr. Johnsingh's handouts, and I started reading them. Then I recalled, oh, Dr. Johnsingh had asked me to make a film on his writings. So I got in touch with someone. It was all lockdown, so I was not in touch with Dr. Johnsingh for quite a long time. Though when I was in Periyar, we would meet regularly. He would visit us in Periyar. And after that, I changed so many offices, so we were not in touch. So a common friend who lived close to his house, I told him, "Could you please go and talk to Dr. Johnsingh and find out if he's willing to make this movie?" And he was more than happy. Then we had a Zoom platform. We set up a Zoom meeting, and Dr. Rawat, Dr. Bibhash Mandav, and Sanjay, and my colleague from Kerala. Then many people, whosoever we thought, we gathered together and we started discussing about the film. But it was all COVID. Second phase came and lockdown, and we discussed about the film, but where do the funds come from? So we started writing to everyone we thought we knew about, from Uttarakhand Forest Department to all corporates everywhere. And if Dr. Dipankar Ghosh remembers, you too were a part of the Zoom meeting once. And but the funds would not come. And in that, I think 1 year went by. So one day, Tanmay, my better half, again, he would listen to all these Zoom meetings. He would be overhearing these meetings. Then he asked, "What are you doing for this last 1 year?" I said, "We want to make a film that Dr. Johnsingh spoke about, but we are not getting the funds." Then he said, "Okay, I will give you the seed money. Go ahead, shoot it." So with that seed money that he gave us, I think we did the first shooting. That too just during the lockdown, or just when the lockdown was opening up. And it was all Dr. Johnsingh's concept. He drafted the schedule, where to start, where to end, how many days to stay where. And Dr. Rawat was also with him, guiding us all through. And Bibhash, with whatever he could do, in whatever way, he supported. And so that is how the shooting started. And interestingly, the filmmaker who made this film, he landed on my doorstep one day, one fine morning, to take pictures of my daughter's paintings. And he was a ZTV photographer, filmmaker. And when I started discussing with him about this film that we are going to make, he said, "I'll make the film for you." So I think this film that has covered the whole Jim Corbett's trail, spanning from Corbett, ending in Rudraprayag, covering Nandor, Durga people, Jwalasar, Chorgalia, Chogar, or your Kalagar, Kanda. I think the entire trail that Dr. Johnsingh has walked, it has been an amazing experience. I was there towards the last part of the first shoot, that was from Chorgalia to Durga people. And Bivash, me and Udayveer, we were there together. And Dr. Johnsingh, me and Dr. Rawat, we had just reached the Durga People Rest House, and there was a storm, and we were just the glass started breaking, and Bivash and team were some not to be found, and he was really worried about it. So that was, I think, my last meeting with him. When we shook hands at Durga People, me and Bivash, we left. I think I saw tears in his eyes. And not only just then, many times he was very emotional about this film and about talking about Corbett. And one thing I have, being his student and having known him closely, even while we were in the boot camp, many times we sat and we talked together. Whenever he used to talk about Corbett's Trail, he had tears in his eyes. So he was very emotional about the whole thing. And when I was shaking hands with him and I said, "Take care," then I saw tears in his eyes. I think, and we were in touch. In every step, we would show him the movie. He has seen the movie when it was finally made, the unedited version of it. And he was very happy about it, and he said, "Don't cut any of my portions." So I really wish that we did edit it from a 2.5 hour to the final film, which is coming out to be 70 minutes. But I really wish that it would be done in parts so that nothing from whatever he has spoken would be cut, and everything would remain, because everything he has spoken has a lot of science, lot of conservation, lot of emotions, and lots that can be only experienced. It cannot be spoken. And Mike, when I lost my father 14 years back, whenever I see anyone talking about my father, I feel that I see a bit of my father in him. And I know that he's no more, but his life should be celebrated, and it will be celebrated with thousands of people whose lives he has touched. And every time you see a mashir, a tiger, or an elephant being saved, you will see your father in them. And I would just like to read out what he wrote when Dr. Johnsingh passed away. He said, Dr. Johnsingh family also wants to thank you for touching, no, not this. Dad might not be there physically anymore, but we and his everlasting presence will always be happy and honored to welcome you to the Johnsingh family home in days and years to come, to join us on our famous round table to break bread and discuss tigers, tuskers, mashir, gorals, doles. I think this movie talks a lot about tigers, elephants, marshirs. And one interesting anecdote I'll tell you, that I think Dr. Johnsingh taught me fishing too. My father would teach me how to angle with earthworms. But it's the first time he taught me how to do angling with colorful flies. And my husband, who would join me off and on because he was in Delhi when I was doing my training in WI, he had self-proclaimed himself as the son-in-law of WWF-India. So what he would do is he borrowed an angling rod from Mr. Pramod Pant, and he would go and do angling in that lake. And the security guard would come running and say, "Dr. Johnsingh has said nobody should fish here." Then he said, "Yes, I'm doing that, and I'm doing catch and release. So go and tell Dr. Johnsingh that I'm practicing catch and release." So I think Tanmay, he could not join me today. And Ashish, the filmmaker, he has also, he wanted to join, he could not join. But I think with everybody's efforts, we have tried to put together this film. It might not be a technically, or might not be a professionally correct film, but it has a lot of emotions, lot of efforts, and lot of contribution from many people, whom I have named, whom I have not named, who have been behind the film. Even Udevir, who has carried us. There are many people who have contributed to making this film, putting together this film, and it was Dr. Johnsingh's dream, and I'm really happy. I will be happy if the film comes up and all of you join in when the film comes up, because whenever I used to imagine this film, I used to think of the release. I used to always see Dr. Johnsingh sitting in the center stage there and talking about the shooting of the film. It didn't happen, but I think somewhere he's looking at us and blessing us. And with these words, I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have the trailer of the movie, please?
the summer of 2022, Dr. A.J.T. Johnsingh, eminent wildlife biologist, set out on his journey in the Corbett landscape, revisiting those places where Jim Corbett had laid to rest the famous man-eating tigers and leopards. Walking over rough terrains in unpredictable weather, Dr. Johnsingh marvels at the Corbett landscape through the eyes of its people, tracing its legacy through the various stories that the landscape beholds. Those tales that the people of Uttarakhand hold close to their heart.
कि हम उसी जगह पर बैठे हैं जहाँ पर कि जिम कॉर्बेट ने नरबक्सी बाघिन का शिकार किया था। वो सो रखे थे अपने बरामदे में, लेकिन जैसे जागे उन्होंने देखा मेरे ऊपर में मैन ईटर चढ़ा हुआ है। We are in a historic location where the Tak man eater was shot. We are in the Assam village where the mother of the Pradhan was killed very close to the house. In 1933, Corbett came here and they shot the man eater, which you call as a Konda man eater. During the 35 years of man-eater hunting, he shot 8 man-eating tigers and 2 leopards. And all these animals in total had killed 1,200 people.
In the present-day context, where human-wildlife conflict is a burning issue, where habitats are getting fragmented and forests are becoming islands amid human-dominated landscapes, these jungle laws do instill in us love for the wild.
If you want to protect this golden moisture, one has to go for the catch and release angling program involving the local people so that they will protect the moisture. One major problem in the outer Himalayas is the drying off of such water holes in summer. So protection of these places are very, very crucial if you want to help the people.
Recapitulating the conservation efforts and the connect between people and forest, Dr. Johnsingh's journey has been full of exciting anecdotes, beautifully crafted along with the stories of Jim Corbett's trysts with the man-eaters.
That was so beautiful. And it's so emotionally seeing him speak and hearing him speak again, exactly in that way that he always did. I'd now like to call upon Dr. Divya Bhanu Singh Chaura. He's the former president of WWF and advisor. So if you can please share some memories of Dr. Johnsingh's life. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I feel somewhat inadequate to stand here and talk of Dr. Johnsingh, whom I used to call him simply as Doc. And he used to simply call me Divya. I do not recall the year in which I met him first, but I think it was sometime in the mid-80s, 1980s, that I was climbing up the steps of the Bombay Natural History Society's headquarters at Hornbill House, and he was coming down with J.C. Daniel. And he looked at me and he said, aren't you the guy who's doing something about the cheetahs? Now, I don't know where he had found that out. I had just about written a paper which was meant for internal circulation for the Ministry of Environment, or rather Ministry of Forests at the time, but he knew about it. What I'm trying to tell you is that apart from what he did in the field, his inquiring mind always looked for new material for anything that was happening around him. And that eclecticness made him, in my opinion, a very different kind of researcher, a very different kind of leader who would lead his flock to the destination without any mishap. And that, I think, was his greatness. Actually, you know, I met him quite by accident. I was knocking around in the Gir forest and I met him. And I've been going to the Gir forest since I was a teenager in 1958, 59. And I thought that I knew a hell of a lot about the Gir. But then walking with him, I found that I knew next to nothing. What he knew, because he'd walked the whole length and breadth of the place, and he knew more than the next guy. And to me, that was a learning experience that one has to be not only eclectic, but one has to get out in the field and start walking. There is no such thing as shortcut to success. You want to do something, you better do it yourself and better do it the hard way. To me, that was a great learning experience from Dr. Johnsingh. Everyone's talked of Dr. Johnsingh's mammals of South Asia, India, which of course is a classic. I mean, it's a classic par excellence. And I can't wait to really read the book which is under print. The other day I was in the BNHS and I asked him about when this book was going to come out. And he said, well, look, we're trying to move it fast and let's see what happens and so on. But it's a shame that old Doc isn't around when this book shall be out. One other point which I would like to mention here, and that is particularly for the Johnsingh family. Of course, he wrote his books. Of course, those books are going to be with us for all time. When a person leaves us, what does he leave behind? His books. What does he leave behind? The people whom he has trained. It's the legacy that the people who have worked under him, worked with him, and stayed with him, that is the monument. You know, I'm always reminded of a great ancient Roman emperor for whom a monument was put and a legend was put onto it. If you are looking for a monument, look around you. So if one is looking for a monument to old Doc, look around you. Look at the people he has created. When I say created, he's trained and made them to be what they are. And that, to me, is the biggest legacy that anybody can leave behind him. The one specific point I would like to say is that in any person's work, particularly of a person like Dr. Johnsingh, who spent his entire life not only in research but in conservation, would surely have left a gold mine of his papers. And I do hope, and I'm sure, that the Johnsingh family will preserve these papers for all time, because that is something from which people like me who spend some time in libraries of one kind or another shall forever benefit. I would not like to take very much longer time. A lot has been spoken about him, and no matter how much you speak about old Doc, it's not enough. But I do recall very vividly my last meeting with him at a very, to me, and I'm sure to him, a very happy place to be in, which was in the Run of Kutch. It was in November 1922, if I remember correctly. Three of us, it so happened, three cousins, the Pushpendra Singh of Lunawada from the Panchmahal districts of Gujarat, who's done a tremendous amount of conservation work with a very low key. Ranjit Singh, whom all of you I'm sure have heard of and know of, and myself. We were all three over 80 years old. And we were sort of standing around, and one of our field scientists came and said, look, this is an over 80s club. So three of you stand there and we want to take a picture. So they took a picture. And then Johnsingh said, I want to take this picture. So he took a picture of three of us. And then he gave his mobile to this gentleman and came and stood next to us. I said, hey, Doc, you are an interloper. You're not 80. Please go away. And he said, no, but I want to be here. What a shame. We are here and he is not. Thank you.
That's very inspiring to hear that photograph after 80. That's a good thing to aspire to. Thank you so much, Dr. Chawra. I'm just going to read out a couple of lines from this fantastic book, the one that's also there in the trailer, on Jim Corbett's trail and other stories from treetops. You know, it's important because we look at Dholes, the Asiatic wild dog, as this fierce, dogged hunter that sort of doesn't seem to have any mercy. But Dr. Johnsingh was one of the first people to write about them in a manner that was so intimate and a manner that was so interesting to read. So here goes. This is about Bent Ear, his favorite male dhol from Bandipur in the 1970s. All dhols look alike to the casual observer. Attentive and prolonged observation, however, can help us differentiate a few individuals based on variations in their color and shape. Bent Ear was one individual I grew to recognize. My first meeting with him was on 4th January 1977 when I went to the Dhol Den at around 11 in the morning. He had an unusually thick neck and a pale white throat, chest, and belly. He was an old Dhol. He was suspicious of my presence, but never came close to investigate. He appeared to be the leader of the pack and was extremely fond of his pups. When the pack had made a kill of a small animal, the pups would run to him, pestering him to regurgitate extra meat. I soon developed a strange affection for this aged hunter who flitted freely through the forest. He led a daring life. Alone and unafraid, he slipped without any hesitation through the thickets which I myself entered with much reluctance. When he disappeared suddenly in April 1978, I felt a pang of sadness that stayed with me for a very long time. Really, when I first read this book several years ago, I was actually reminded of Dr. Johnsingh himself because he used to walk in the forest in Hawaii chappals. He writes about that in this book as well. And he would go through the forest unafraid, even as he grew older. Thank you for listening. I'd now like to call upon Dr. M.K. Ranjit Singh, who is the architect of the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. Is he online? Yes. If we can please have Dr. M.K. Ranjit Singh to speak to us. It's not there. Sorry, we seem to be having, yeah. Can I request Dr. G.S. Rawat, who has joined us online, to please speak to us about Dr. Johnsingh? Dr. G.S. Rawat, please, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, WWF, for organizing this important event in honor of Dr. A.J.T. Johnsingh. Obviously, much has been said about him, and I would just like to say that I had the honor and the privilege of working very, very closely with him for more than 35 years. 20 years in Wildlife Institute of India under his mentorship. He was my immediate boss and head of department. When we were serving in Wildlife Institute of India as a boss, he would always want us to excel. And of course, his grading for me for all through was good, or at the most very good. And you know that in government service, good and very good do not carry very high marks. So only after his retirement, I became one of the excellent persons in his books, and I continue to relish my journeys with him and my travels, memorable walks with him, especially in Rajaji Corbett landscape, Shivaliks, and other parts of Indian jungles. Towards the later part of his life, when his knee was not very cooperative, he walked with a limping leg to very high altitude, 3,400 meters in Oscourt Wildlife Sanctuary with me. And we stayed in a cave, in a shepherd's cave for 3 nights. It was a dripping cave, and but his spirits, his enthusiasm for that area was simply amazing. And I can go on and on narrating about my experiences with him, and about all the work he has done, and all the people, forest officers, students he has trained. Those are simply amazing. Recently, one of his students compiled total publications by him. It comes to over 400, beginning with his first paper on the birds of Tirunal Valley in 1972 to his latest publications, papers on Indian cheetah, story of Indian cheetah. Of course, he uh, quotes Mr. Divya Vanu Singh and others. And my last meeting with him was on March 9th, when I had especially gone to see him. And we knew, and doctors had also told, that he was really suffering very badly. While parting, I told him, "Sir, you will be all right soon, and I'll come again." But possibly he knew. He smiled at me and said, "Rawat, there is a saying that enjoy the sunshine, but keep your gunpowder dry." That is the kind of remarks he would made at every incident. A very, very personal friend of mine, a mentor and a guide. Of course, the film which Dr. Padma Mohanty is making will be my, one of the best walks with him. I am looking forward to see that film. And to end, I'll just quickly remind the entire audience and everybody here that 5 points I quite often quote from him, whatever he taught us. The first point was about the jungle ethics. He used to say that to listen to the song of the jungles, your silence is a must. That was first thing he would tell all the students and trainees walking the jungle. Secondly, he used to tell that use all your 5 senses in appreciating and understanding nature. That was another. The third point, uh, Vivash has already told, he would give lot of emphasis on sambar conservation, and he used to say sambar conservation is tiger conservation in Indian context. Then yet another thing about Mahashir, of course, we had lots and lots of walks to Kuluchor and so many other river valleys in Uttarakhand. He was, of course, fond of Uttarakhand so much. He would say that Mahashir is the tiger of Indian rivers. That indicates health of aquatic ecosystems. We need to conserve it by all means. And lastly, his teaching, I remember very vividly. He used to emphasize much on honesty. He used to say, "Be an honest naturalist. It is the utmost important. Only then people will believe you and respect you." With these words, I pay my humble tribute to my teacher, my mentor, Dr. Johnsingh. Thank you all.
May we have Dr. Ranjit Singh online? He's already online. Dr. Ranjit Singh, will you please say something
Yes.
about Dr. Johnsingh? Will you switch on your camera also, sir?
I don't know how to do it. Okay. Let me try. Okay. I think, yes, okay. Thank you very much for giving me this privilege to talk about Dr. Johnsingh. A lot of very interesting things have been already said about him, and I'll try not to repeat those, but to touch on those aspects that may not have been adequately dealt with so far. A person must be viewed from the, not from the backside as it were, but in the context of the times that he lived in and began his career. First, he came from, if I may be pardoned by saying so, not a very privileged background. He had to fight his way up. In the early, I came to know him just about the time or a little after the Wildlife Protection Act was framed. He was, to my mind, the first Indian to write a PhD on a wildlife subject, on a species. There were others, and as Director of Wildlife, I gave permission to a number of other people who came and did their PhD, whether it was Paul Jocelyn or Green and others. Raghu came later on, but Johnsingh was a pioneer. And at that time, the Wildlife Protection Act had come. The Tiger project started a year later, and the tiger was in everybody's mind. A very important book had been written, The Deer and the Tiger by George Schaller, and that inspired a number of others. And Kailash Sankla had written The Tiger, which were very definite. So the focus was on the tiger. In drafting the Wildlife Protection Act, I put the wolf and the wild dog in Schedule 1. Previous to that, the state acts, such as they were, the Bombay State Act and some of the others, the wild dog was vermin. When I put it in Schedule 1, there were howls. I regret to say a lot of people had a lot to say about the act. Nobody helped me. Though I sent the document to a number of people, nobody did. But anyway, that is all over. But they howled when they were, and I remember people repeating the thing, the heartless fiends, wild dogs. Johnsingh goes and picks on the wild dog, not the tiger, not the leopard, not something much more dramatic, the elephant. Sukumar later on did it. But he picked on the wild dog. And he wrote a very definitive thing on what were pariahs of the Indian jungle. And let me say this, which few people probably know. He did it all on foot in Bandipur and elsewhere. And while he was on foot, and my old friend Nanu Nair, who was then Chief Wildlife Warden of Kerala, and we traveled together, including he capturing a wild dog swimming across the Periyar Lake, much to my regret, but anyway. Nair and he were going along the road when they were charged by an elephant. Johnsingh climbed a tree and escaped, and he watched Nanu Nair being killed in his presence. But he continued that work on foot. How many people would do that kind of work on foot? They were not the days when they were given vehicles or a horse or an elephant to ride on. He was walking. And he did it in what was then elephant country and still is. So, and then of course, he set an example. I will not take your time, but he was a pathfinder. He was a game changer. And all the time, he maintained his demeanor and his very self-effacing kind of a self. It was not that I did this and I did that. We conservationists are prima donnas. We talk about ourselves and we denigrate others. Johnsingh was not one of those. God bless him and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjit Singh. We have Dr. Sonali Ghosh, Field Director of Kaziranga Tiger Reserve. Dr. Ghosh, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I was more to listen today. And thank you, Dr. Dipankar, for sharing that link with me. This photo on the background is a very classic photo, and I hope people can see it. I'll switch off my yeah. So this is not from Kaziranga. This is basically from Manas, and it was taken by Dr. Johnsingh. And I thought it's an ordinary photo, and he's just taken it. But then his keen acumen, his keen sense of detailing, as many of you have spoken of, he said, this is a picture that I show in all my training classes because that's the correct way to hold a gun. And so there are these two forest frontline who are holding their guns, which is pointing downwards. So, and that's why he took that picture, and he was able to show that. I think my biggest regret would be that while he came to Manas when I was there, and he was happy, and we were happy to get him there. He promised me to come to Kaziranga, but I think it's just that we missed him because he was planning to come this year. And yes, as many of the previous speakers have spoken, I think the biggest learning has been his strong work ethic, his strong integrity and passion for what we do. And as a student who has known him since 1995, it is time to celebrate him. It is time to revisit all that he taught us and take that into what we do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. We have Sanjay. Sanjay, would you like to share your thoughts? And then I'll come here. Sanjay Gubbi. Sanjay, you need to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody, and I'm in the. I'm surprised that I've been asked to talk, and it's great to see Mike and other people out there. Though I know it is a day to celebrate about Dr. Johnsingh. Every evening, every day, I just got back from the field today, and I came back early because I wanted to be part of this, and this is the first tribute I'm attending. And I was, since he retired and came back to Bangalore, we have been very close. And what I remember the most of all my interactions from Kapini to Mysore Hospital. After a few minutes, he was back in his senses, and he took his left hand and waved his hairs like this and smiled at me when I said, "Sir, you will be all right." That's the most memorable moment for me. And when he recovered, I went to his home, and the first thing he said was, "Sanjay, here is something for you." And he gave me his Swiss knife. For a field person, what better thing as a gift, which has been part of his life during all his walks. Can you imagine? That is going to be part of my life forever. That's what I need to tell. It depicts, the Swiss knife is not just an equipment, it depicts a person, it depicts a persona. It depicts what some people love, the field. And he is going to be part of India's landscape. Unfortunately, we lost three stalwarts who are icons of this country, Dr. Johnsingh, Mr. K.M. Chinnappa, and Dr. G.V. Reddy in a very short span of time, who are actually icons of India's conservation and who inspired people like us to do on-ground conservation. Hail conservation, and I'm so thankful to wildlife that it brought me in touch with people like Dr. Johnsingh. Thank you very much, and sorry for my emotions out here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. There are a few more people online, and if any of you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will invite you as a panelist. But in the meantime, from this audience, if anybody wants to say something, please. Can we have the roving mic? No, what from here?
Thank you for this impromptu opportunity. It was not scheduled because I had not requested earlier. Lots of people have reminisced about his qualities, and we're all celebrating him today. But there is one strain of his character, his very staccato and very ready humor, and which many other people have also talked about. I just wanted to narrate a couple of very funny anecdotes from the times that we've spent together. This was at the Wildlife Institute, and I think BC and Rawat and others who were at that time present in the faculty might remember this episode. There was one of the first teams of the US Fish and Wildlife Service who had come. The institute was still operating from the old FRI building over the Timber Museum those days, and we used to run between Vasant Vihar, where our quarters and rented accommodations were. But a new guest house was being set up for the US faculty. And there an introduction meeting happened. And I think it was just a sheer coincidence that Dr. Johnsingh, Shekhar Singh, who was in the advisory group of the institute that time, and Meva Singh, who was visiting for some work from Mysore. And many other people were in a tight group. And then when these US faculty people were brought in and introduced, and when somebody said, and this is Johnsingh, so one of the faculty persons, I don't remember correctly, it was maybe Steve Berwick at that time. He just wanted to have a little dig at us. Not that he did not know people from before, and not that he was not aware of India's ethnicity, but he said, but you're not a Sardar. And then within the next minute, he was introduced to Meva Singh, who was in his younger days very sprightly and thin, and but you are also not a Sardar. And then Shekhar Singh. So he repeated this fun making 3 times, but the Johnsingh was not to take it lying down. He wanted to have the last word. So he said, well, we all have Singh in the name, and I will bet with you, you can make me compete with any Sardar. And I will outrun, outwalk, outgun, and outlast him. So that was his, very ready habit of getting back at you with his fun. Sometimes it was staccato, sometimes it could have a sense of wryness in it, but he meant well for everybody. Another episode which I just want to share, and which is more personal, is that when I joined the institute in '89, of course I had known him before. I went from here from WWF to WII on faculty. And as students of wildlife biology, we had read him and his work. But when I actually went and had the opportunity to live with him on campus and to be with him, when he saw me coming, I used to be a long distance biker at that time. So I came on my Yamaha, and I usually wear fabric shoes. Due to an old injury, I don't wear hard leather shoes. And he also had this habit of wearing either chappal or canvas. usually Hawai Chappal. So he looked at me, he sized me up and he said, oh, another non-cadre person. Because the institute was then full of IFS. And so he said, another person from the non-formal, non-cadre fraternity. He looked and then we exchanged notes. He says, what causes you to not wear leather? And I said, I have an old injury caused by a bull on a street. And then he narrated about his painful knee, which had been with him for a long time. So just two small episodes, which I thought will, make us reminisce about his personality. And of course, his work on the wildlife science, and everybody has spoken about it, so I don't want to delve in at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaur. We have Dr. Erak Barucha here. Dr. Barucha, would you like to say something?
Yes, it's, I mean, the first thing I want to say to all of you is that I will miss him very, very much because we got very, very close for many, many years. And Mike is there, and Mike knows how close the two of us were. Johnsingh would ask me for various things, including his health care, his health issues, whenever he had a problem. And I often spoke to him about things that I wanted to understand about wildlife. But I want to tell you a nice little, very small story of out of the many walks that I had with him. One of the most memorable was that one day he told me, Doc, I want to take you to Rajaji to show you Thar. And he said, will you, can we get off at 5:30 in the morning? I said, of course. I was always ready to do that. And especially walking with him was such an enormous pleasure in the forest. So we went there and we went to that old guest house and then walked into the riverbed. Unfortunately, we didn't see any Thar, and he was quite disappointed about that. But I pointed out that in the sand there were stains of very fresh blood, and there was obviously something that had happened there in that riverbed. And we looked and we found very fresh tiger pug marks, and the tiger pug marks led us to the edge of the riverbed. And then in that very steep riverbed, we could see the grass and the undergrowth broken. This tiger had dragged a full-grown sambar because you could see the marks of his antlers on the sand. And we instinctively, I suppose, in those days you could do dangerous things like this. We started climbing up there. Having climbed for about 5-7 minutes, we realized it was extremely steep. And I was wondering how this tiger could have actually climbed this steep slope with pulling a sambar up there. And then suddenly we both turned to each other and we both quietly laughed at each other, and we realized what a tremendously dangerous thing we had done. It was so spontaneous and so at the same moment that he and I realized that we had done something so extremely stupid to follow this fresh tiger pug mark up a very steep slope, which I found difficult to come down. Johnsingh with his long legs could walk and move very rapidly, and I would very often have to take 2 steps when he had taken only 1. So we came down and we said, we should have never done this, right? So this is what happens when you get excited about wildlife. And with him, it was always a new pleasure. He was also so fond of his Mashir thing. He was very excited about the Tata's connections about Mashir and ex-situ conservation of Mashir and so on. He had so many, many interests. It wasn't just tigers and elephants. Johnsingh would be interested in anything that was around him. And I think that was his basic strength of what he loved most, which was conservation of wildlife. Mike, I'm happy you're there today. Thank you. for all the interactions you had with me when he was very, 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 very seriously ill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bharucha. We have Dr. Savarkar. Sir, will you please unmute and share your thoughts? Sir, you have to unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir,
this is about my longtime friend, Dr. Johnsingh. A lot has been already said about him, so I'll keep this short. I first met him in the first week of December 1977 in Bandipur Tiger Reserve. I was at that time Deputy Director of the Melghat Tiger Reserve, and I fondly remember the notes that we exchanged talked about my own reserve, about which at that time he was not very familiar. But I was very interested in his PhD work that was going on at that time on dholes, and something has already been said about that. I didn't know at that time that I would have the privilege of working with him. And I joined Wildlife Institute in 1979, and Dr. Johnsingh and I became colleagues from 1984 till I retired in 2003. He still had 2 years more as the Dean of Faculty of Wildlife Science. While he joined in 1984, we were neighbors on the campus of the Forest Research Institute. My 2 children, a son and a daughter, were contemporary school-going children with his 2 sons, Mike and Mervyn, and they are still in contact with each other. My wife, being from Tamil Nadu, her friendship with Mrs. Johnsingh was particularly strong because of the connection of the language. And of course, being neighbors, we were very close to, we became very close to each other. Then we went on to the new campus, and Johnsingh became the head of the wildlife biology faculty. I headed the faculty of wildlife management. And we shared teaching, training, and many other tasks, long walks in the forest, especially in the Rajaji National Park, which was kind of a backyard to the Wildlife Institute. Talking about Dr. Johnsingh's writings, his many scientific articles, papers, and the books that have already been mentioned. These are wonderful to read, really. And they have a historical perspective, and they are of great literary merit, that even if you are not a scientist, you could really understand what he's talking about from the bottom of his heart. He had a wide canvas of interests and a great sense of humor that has already been talked about. He was kind, he was humble, he was very respectful to people around him. After retirement, we often came together, and that was actually participating and in training in short courses. These courses were for the armed forces, judges of the courts, officers from the customs, and bureaucrats from different services. The last time we met in the field was in 2016 or 2018 in Kaziranga National Park. That was a short training for officers from the armed forces. And we had a wonderful time out in the wild, and particularly a fight between 2 male rhinos, I can still recall, was quite a spectacle. After that, the last time that I met him was in 2018 in a seminar in the Wildlife Institute of India. And I think after that, we simply couldn't meet, but I was in touch with whatever work was going on that he was doing. And we often chatted on WhatsApp. But then suddenly things, became sad when his illness took place. But he was very brave during that time, as always, which was characteristic of him. And that was the only illness that I know of him. Otherwise, even getting a common cold or anything, I was not aware of. Dr. Johnsingh has set very high standards for those who have set themselves to serve nature, a leader in science, a person to look up to. Not easy, but his inspiring association with people who have known him, people who have not known him but have read whatever has been written by him. They would cherish all of that and try very hard to come up to that expectation that he has already left behind. I am going to miss my friend very much, but even with his physical absence, he continues to be with me as an associate. And sometimes when I'm stumped with a question, I say, I must ask that to Dr. Johnsingh, but then I suddenly remember that he's not there. But I go back into the notebooks, the profuse notes that I have seen. I've got about 70 different notebooks in which the time that I've spent with him, and somewhere along the way, I find an answer. So that it was a great honor being associated with him as a colleague and as a dear friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone? Bhuminathan.
Yeah, very good evening. So my association with Dr. Johnsingh sir is in the Tamil Nadu, mostly the Western Ghats, where I used to go with him in the treks. So last trekking we were in Nilgiris, 4 or 5 days together. We were going into Kodanadu, Mukurti. So all along the walk. So he always give new perspectives and ideas. All that he is like an open book. And for him I have to learn butterflies, and I have to go for every plant that you see, what is this flower and what is that. So I can't say that I am looking at I'm following elephants and I am working on elephants. So he asked everything. Then I got introduced by Mr. A.J.T when towards his retirement time, Johnson's retirement time. So probably the last trip of IFS officers trainees came to Mudumalai. And we were joining in the team, and he was like very punctual to them that whatever discussion is going on, the time is up, we'll have to go. So that type of keeping the teacher and the students. So always we see the students and gauge the teachers. So Mr. Desai was very excellent, very skilled person in the field. Then his teacher, we don't have to say what kind of personality Dr. Johnsingh was. So when we were going into the field in the Mayar, he always talked about golden mercy. And he said openly, after his field visit, he wrote that this special task force camp established for catching Veerappan So Veerappan is no more. Why these people are here? So they will finish off this mass here. So this camp should be vacated from this Mayar Valley, he said openly. And then when we were, all the time he talked about Nilgiri Tar reintroduction in the Glenmorgan. He walked in this, in his 60s, 70s years old, he walked all the way to the Glenmorgan Hills. And then he looked at all that and said, at least 200 tar can be there in this Glenmorgan Hills. So finally, through his wish and, WWF team and all the other, Nilgiri Tar team, so the Tamil Nadu government finally, separate project, a special project for Nilgiri Tar is established in Tamil Nadu, in which this component of reintroduction of Nilgiri Tar in the historic sites also been mentioned. So then we went to, Mukurti. I said last time when I went, sir, I saw during, census time, some of the Nilgiri Tar individuals with lumps. So like we have in the cattle. So he said, that's very important to see. So we will go there. So then we went up and we couldn't see the tar actually, but he saw some fresh pellets. So, okay, there are tar in this area. So we will have to write this. So everything after his, return, he will follow up and meticulously write everything. And he asked everyone to write like Bivas sir mentioned. So he always write like a student, and he also wants others, to write everything and read. And so that's the very important thing that I learned a lot. I miss him a lot. So last, rides in Donau, so in Tirunelveli. So I wanted to go and see him. So I went there. I met his brother, just 2 years younger than him. And he not only asked everyone he met, the students, he did not ask only the students about the Jim Corbett book. His brother also, he said, I am also asked by Johnsingh to read Jim Corbett book. So it was nice after meeting their, his brothers and Mike and Marvin there in the. So I'm very, happy to be part of this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhumi. Anyone else? No? Okay, before we go to Mike, a few things about Dr. Johnsingh. This was, as Mr. Ravi Singh was saying, he became a senior advisor to WWF in 2006. And I was posted in Sikkim, and one day I get this call from Sunita saying that Dr. Johnsingh is coming. So we sent a vehicle, he came, and he took some classes. Dr. Sandeep Tambe, he was a CF then, and we did some treks and stuff. And then we were to go to Barse, a wildlife sanctuary, and Dr. Johnsingh wanted to visit the red panda habitat. He said, I've never walked a red panda habitat. We need to go. The morning we were supposed to leave, somebody fell sick and we had to stay back. And I told him, I said, what would you like to do? Shall we go in the evening? He said, no, field trip cannot be postponed. I'll go. And he left with the driver. Now our office driver, BK Thapa, had never been anywhere outside Sikkim. I think once or twice he had been to Siliguri. Didn't know any language other than Nepali. And Dr. Johnsingh, obviously, didn't know how to speak Nepali. And I was like, how will you go? How will you manage? And they went straight to Barse. He showed him Himalayan palm civet, and then that was their friendship. It was sign language between two persons. And BK Thapa came back as a wildlifer. I mean, he started going, say, I have seen that animal, I have seen that. I said, wow, I mean, you have inspired someone. Bhumi talked about his habit of reading. Dr. Johnsingh, I think he had a preference to stay in this building. We still have a guest room on the second floor, very next to Mr. Ravi Singh's office, and he would come, he would have his daily meetings, and he would sleep there. So I remember one evening we had some program in IIC, and we went out. There's a restaurant where they serve some dosas. We had early dinner, and I dropped him back, and I went home. I was fast asleep, midnight, 11:30, and the phone rang. It was Dr. Johnsingh. I thought there was probably an emergency, because generally in this building, the guard would lock it from outside and go, and you had to climb down from back. So he said, Dipankar, do you know where Mr. Ravi Singh keeps his keys? I said, keys? Why do you need his keys? He said, he has locked some 2 very important books in the almirah. I want to read those. I said, well, I don't know. And then tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we'll get somebody. Sunita, you sent Sunil. He said, no, I'll break the almirah. And then I said, hey, please don't, don't break. And, don't break the almirah. And next morning, I think Sunil came and he opened the almirah and gave him those books. He had a meeting and he had to attend that. Talking about meetings, Sandeep Tiwari, you would remember, Bivas talked about Gola Corridor. That was the previous National Board of Wildlife. And Gola Corridor was raised up to, I think, a very high level. And Dr. Johnsingh was talking, the Honorable Minister was there with the DG Forest and Secretary Forest, Secretary, I think Secretary Railways was also there. And then somebody from Uttarakhand Forest Department said that yes, Gola Corridor is there, but there was no elephant last year. And Dr. Johnsingh in his typical way stood and he said, even if an elephant crosses that passage once in 10 years, it's still a corridor. It's not up to us, it's up to the elephants. Lastly, and he was a different human being. He thought completely differently. This was, I think, 2017. And he had a meeting here of Aspen Institute. So he came here and he saw me on the corridor. He said, Dipankar, come, I have something for you. I came. He always used to carry a rucksack. So he reached inside his rucksack and took out like crumpled paper. So I grabbed it and my arm fell. It was heavy. He said, see it. Opened it. It was a big mango, semi-ripe. He says, this is last of the wild mangoes from the Western Ghats. And he remembered my son was 7 years old. He said, give it to your son. He's not yet 10. He will remember that taste for his life. This was Dr. Johnsingh. Thinking differently. Mike, can we have you here now? Thank you.
This is good enough. Good evening, I'm Dr. Johnsingh's son. So obviously I had to come with notes. So seeing all of you talk, I'm not sure I have much to say. But when I got the invite from Dipankar, and he had kept some time for me, I knew he won't like it if I didn't come with notes. So I have some notes, but I think I just take it naturally. First, my sincere thanks to so many of you who are physically present, and I see a lot of people online who've been a very integral part of his life and certainly ours. Many of you know him for many years, but you can't beat me. I've been with him for 50 years. I know I don't look 50, but I've been with him for 50 years. Next slide, please. So when I had to prepare something, it was a journey for me too. Last 2 days, I was a bit caught up with work, and I got a message from Neha ma'am that she wanted a write-up, and which eventually led me to pull out all the old albums. That's when you discover all the pictures you have. So I contacted my brother who's in the US, who's an IT geek. I'm not so much good with computers. So I put him on the task, since he works for Microsoft. I said, get your act together. I need to get a PPT online. So you please do some work for me. So we got the pictures down. And for me, it's been a journey down memory lane. So that's him with his first Nikon camera. And he had, I think, 2 color film rolls for his 2 years to study because they were so expensive. And as you already know, he only used chappals to walk around, even in cobra forest and elephant forest. And he used to laugh at me when last trip we did together when he was okay was every birthday we had decided that his birthday is on October 14th, and we made a pact that it's going to be a father and son thing only, no wives. Mom was never there, but no girls, just boys trip out. And we'd gone to Tadoba, and thanks to his connections, I mean, generally we could travel most of the forests. I think he took that privilege. So we saw one lovely female tigress, and I went berserk with my camera. And we always had a competition when we came back to see what the best picture. So in that best picture, I showed him, and he had taken just about 4 or 5, you know. So he said, Mike, you shoot 100 pictures and get 1 good picture. I shoot 5 pictures and get 1 good picture as yours. So those are the 2 cameras he used all his life. They're still with us, old Nikon cameras. This is the oldest picture of him I got of him with Dr. Salim Ali, who influenced his life greatly, with a lot of people from the NHS, Mr. J.C. Daniel, etc. Next, please. So I'm sure many of you would have seen these pictures of my dad, because these are all in our personal collection. That's my dad doing his study at Smithsonian in the US. And we used to track radio color raccoons and opossums. We had the privilege of being with him for 1 year. And I used to be surprised because there it to be pretty freezing cold. And for a Tamilian who's lived very close to the equator, that place was pretty cold. And like many of you pointed out, regardless of the time, the temperature, he had to be up. Regardless of the cold, he had to be outside. And, you know, in those, it was 1979, 1980, when US looked like a golden place to live. I don't think it is anymore compared. I think our country is much better. And when we were supposed to come back, a lot of people said, you shouldn't go back. You know, you can get a job, easily teach wildlife sciences in the universities there. He said, you know what, that'll be like betrayal. I was called here to learn and to go back and teach. I think he had a thing for animals. And these are just some random shots I found of him interacting with them wherever he went, even if he was not paying attention and probably setting the focus on his camera. So growing up in Dr. Johnsingh's household as his children meant most of your holidays were in national parks. We didn't go to malls. We didn't go to shopping centers. It was more Corbett or Rajaji. So if you can guess who's the little boy on the elephant, any choices? Well, that's me. So that was in Bandipur, and I heard the Mahots used to come and ask my parents that they're going to take the elephant for a bath, and I was to accompany, and there I was. And yeah, he always said I was a little crazy. Even in his good days, he was just telling just before he passed away, when he was still highly cognitive, he was telling me that I think he was probably having a bath in the river, and I was standing on a cliff watching him, and he looked at me, and I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and he said, jump. And he said, this crazy fellow jumped into the river. So I said, well, that's what it takes to join the Air Force at the end of the day, I guess. So yeah, so that's me. That's our childhood. Probably you're going to correlate with your childhood if you went with an elephant for a bath. Like I said, that's me with my dad. You can see the look on my face. Pretty disinterested, because all holidays meant that you were in the forests. And he had a penchant for making you learn scientific names. And I really never understood the reason why. So, you know, every grass, every tree, he wanted me to mug up the scientific names. And, you know, at some point, at this stage, I certainly couldn't say no to him because he was still much bigger than me. But there came a point that I said, look, Dad, I'm not joining wildlife sciences, and you know it. Okay. So he gave up on me on that. But I think genetics do matter. And eventually, me, my brother, my wife, my brother's wife, Elizabeth, somehow all of us have fallen in love with national parks. And I think we spend most of our holidays now there in the national park. I think it's genetic. So the next picture will explain it to you. You're talking about Nilgiri tar. So there I am with the Nilgiri tar myself. Yeah, so now it's become a part of our lives, thanks to him. And yes, I'll shamelessly admit, we do get an privilege when I use my surname. And even recently, we were in Kana National Park a few months ago, and somehow the people there got to know that, saw my surname, and they thought Dr. Johnsingh was there. I had to tell them, no, I'm not Dr. Johnsingh, I'm his son. But suddenly, I think a lot of doors suddenly opened, and I'm very grateful to him for that. Growing up in Dr. Johnsingh's house meant there are no family pictures in the albums. It's either elephants, tigers, marshes, dhol, well, cheetal, you name it, sambar, of course. So this is one of the rare family pictures I found in our collection. That's my mom, me in the middle, dad, and my brother. And of course, everybody recognizes this place. It's a classic place where everyone has got their photo clicked, I guess. So that's one of the few family pictures we have together. He had a penchant for guns, knives. So his knives, as Sanjay Gopi already has explained, he had a wide assortment of knives. And this family has always had guns. They were hunters turned conservationists, I guess. So this is Jim Corbett's rifle, by the way, which he had the privilege of holding when he went to, I'm not sure of the exact place. I'm sure Pandu must be able to. Huh? Oh, okay. So that was his rifle, which he had the privilege of holding. I'm not sure which one, which man-eating tiger it shot. But yeah, so he had a thing for guns, and he made sure that we all learned how to shoot, climb trees, climb ropes, swim. And seriously, that helped me join the Air Force. When I went for my selection process, I think I just had to walk through it because he had taught us everything already. Next. I think his ability to shoot helped him a lot, because that's same with Ravi Challan. And they had radio collared the lions in Gir. He also radio collared the lions, the elephants in Rajaji. And yeah, so that's him. I think his shooting training did help him a lot in darting elephants, lions. And I personally seen him dart at times. And I thought he was a bit crazy when he was darting elephants once. Near Rajaji, especially there was a elephant calf which was hit by a train, and it was immobile, and the mother was protecting it very fiercely. And I think he had to put it down, and mother was charging at him. But yeah, he was on an open truck and tranquilizing that elephant. He had the courage to do it and the conviction to do some things, as you all know. I won't get into the details. Yes, he was a good shot. That's one of his dearest friends, Mr. Negi. They were like brothers. Negi uncle passed away due to cancer. They both loved angling. Negi uncle's son also happened to be a few batches senior to me in the National Defense Academy. He was also a fighter pilot. Unfortunately, he lost his life in a flying accident. But I think when I saw this picture, I don't know who sent it to me. You took this picture? Yeah, so I found this picture very beautiful. And I just thought, I don't know whom I messaged it to, because I've been trying to reply to everyone who writes to me. I said they're probably catching Mashi together. You know, so I don't think both are alone now. That's one of his most favorite treks. Tiger's Nest, my apology, in Bhutan. I don't know how many times he's climbed that place. Every time he'll call me and said, you know, I climbed up to Tiger's Nest. I said, Dad, how many times have you done it? He said, Mike, it's a beautiful trek. Like I talked about genetics, because he loved it so much, me and my wife eventually landed up going the same path on his footsteps. So I think that is one of his most happiest places, where he also took a lot of goral pictures. Talking about gorals, his eyesight was crazy. I thought mine was good. So every time we used to drive from Delhi to Dehradun, we used to stop near Rajaji and try and look for goral. On the brown slopes of Shivaliks, we used to look for a brown goral hiding behind a brown grass. So we used to stop the car or gypsy or whatever we were coming in, and he'd try and spot, and he'll spot. And then he'll tell me, look there, look there. So after some time, honestly, I used to lie. Yeah, Dad, I've seen it. And he could obviously catch me when I'm lying because I've been with him for 50 years. So he'll say, no, you've not seen it. No, Dad, I've seen it. I just don't know how that man could spot things. Same for his hearing. To the end of his days, his eyesight was failing, but his hearing, people who visited my house, he could recognize their voice straight away. So his 5 senses, of course, he loved to eat, so his tongue was very good. His senses were beautifully tuned to everything that was around him. He had a man which all 5 senses worked magnificently almost to the last. Next. Love to trek, love to click pictures. Why I put this picture was very specific. So we have a huge collection of his pictures. My brother's latest estimate report from Microsoft was 80,000 odd pictures. He's already put a lot on Shutterstock and things like that, obviously pro bono. We're happy to, if you can advise us what we can do. I got tons of his black and white negatives. Everything he has saved, we have it saved, thanks to my brother's IT background. We're happy to share it for any cause, anytime, anywhere. Yeah. So his pictures, his writings, his books, they're available. So we have a huge collection of his sticks also. Everywhere he went, he came back home with a stick. Okay, and he had them fly it down. So I have sticks with Vistara stickers, Air India stickers, Indian Airlines stickers, Jet Airways stickers, Indigo stickers, SpiceJet stickers. And recently I was trying to clean up the house, and I have a lot of walking sticks too. Different types, different wood built. He had a penchant for them. I don't know why he collected them, but we had them. So if anybody wants to go for a trek, you know whom to call for his walking stick. He loved elephants. He passed on that love to me, but he respected them immensely. And I think that's why he lived in elephant forests and not got killed. He thought I was crazy when I used to get down to click pictures, and he has warned me, be safe. This is one of the rare pictures I've seen of him actually probably standing on ground and watching an elephant and clicking pictures. Probably he's already assessed it can't cross. So he respected the forest and the elephants, and I'm sure he's passed it on to you all also, and those who are probably online. That's his most famous or favorite. I mean, tiger pictures, it's very difficult to compete today. As I came up WWF stairs, I realized there are too many good tiger photographers. So yeah, that's his most famous black and white tiger picture, which he shot on a mango tree. I think it's May 17th, 1976, if I'm not wrong. And this picture has been published in a lot of places. And he always remembered this, and I'm sure all of you have heard the story from him. So that's why I put this picture up. It's not a competition with tiger pictures. You just can't compete with the pictures today. Next. So, heard a lot of you speak, and what I took back from my dad, or I take away some things, is how we cared for the junior most. I'm using the word junior most because there are forest officers here and they understand probably what I'm saying. For him, rank really held no meaning. And anytime we went out, like I said, all our weekends were in the forests. We never went to shopping malls and movies and things like that. So he made my mother pack mutton biryani. And as sons or children, we used to expect we will get the first cut, the choicest pieces. So the moment we used to reach the guest house, let's say it's lunchtime, he used to call me and say, Mike, get the biryani, and put the plates out. And I used to think, oh, I'll get the finest cut. And he'll fill the plates and first give it to the driver, the cook. And I'm like, Dad, I'm hungry. I mean, I don't say it, but, but he was always there giving it to. So that's how somebody asked, the Pankaj said that Your driver went with him as a driver and came back as a naturalist, and they didn't have any language connection between them. He survived in Dehradun for 20 years by learning just 4 words, aage, piche, dane, baएं. Because that's what he needed to tell people ki kahan jana hai. He never learned Hindi. Everybody who worked with us learned English. Because the man never learned Hindi. Okay? Because he said, what's the requirement? That is not because he didn't want to learn Hindi. It is because he was so nice to them, he could get away with it. And as growing up children, I went and bargained with, somebody selling vegetables and said, 12 रुपए का था, मैंने 10 रुपए का खरीद लिया. He used to scold me, say, did you become richer? And the lowest denomination he understood. I think the only person who benefited by Modi ji banned 2,000 rupee notes was him. Why? Because he used to carry whatever money he had in his pocket, and which was the highest denomination. And when leaving any guest house, he'll just go and dish out whatever he has. So if you had 2,000 rupee notes, it would have been 2,000 rupee notes. So I think he's the only one who benefited when he made 500 rupee notes, because he used to now dish out 500 rupee notes. So that was him. Next, please. Specific reason why I put this slide was, so Ram Singh was with us for 10 plus years in our house. I think I don't cry so much as Ram Singh cries when we talk about my dad. It just, he's a Nepali, a Gurkha. Their loyalty is obviously legendary. But I think he could connect with these kind of people more, which endeared him. Next. Angling was his passion. He did catch some fish. Okay, I didn't put that picture here. But yes, I think he loved more because of the places we could go to. My wife also used to complain. We go on angling, but I never see you catching fish. Okay, so, and she's right. But I think it was more about the places we went to, the peace it gave. We could easily go and buy a mashi in the market or any fish in the market. It really doesn't matter today. But it was just the places you went to. And yeah, he's got a large collection of rods, huge collection of rods, spinning reels, but I think they'll go silent now. That was his kit. People carried bags and toothpaste and toothbrushes. He carried fishing rods. They also have a wide assortment of airline stickers on top of them. His favorite siesta time after his walks, this is his favorite place in Corbett. Yeah. So when Dad was, I knew the end was coming. It was not a surprise to us. We were prepared mentally, not emotionally. So I was talking to my brother as to, it's going to happen. It was staring at our face. It could have been any day, tomorrow, day after. And so I asked my brother, when it happens, which we knew was going to happen, what's the plan? So he had already told us where he wanted to go. So that I had already made the plans. But I was speaking to Charudat Mishra, who used to visit him very often. I said, Charu, you know what? He said he wants to go to his native town, but the place he'll happily go to when the time is over is Corbett. But there is no provision to do it, But yes, he's in a happy place wherever he is right now. Next slide. That's the three of us. I'm just showing you some personal pictures. I'll run through them quickly because I don't think we'll go through this again. This is the last picture we all three had together. That's my wife and Dad and me at one of our cousins' weddings. That's my younger brother, Mervyn, settled in Seattle. His wife is from the US. And yeah, that's Elizabeth, Mervyn, and my dad. This is after he had a stroke. He recovered pretty well. And we went to Nandi Hills. And like I said, behind is Syed, the bearded gentleman, who's been with him for 20 years. He was his man Friday. And we were very blessed, actually, even though we went through trials and tribulations. We were very blessed with the people we had, the support we had. And that's when I want to really thank WWF, for everything you did. I know Dad was not contributing to you in terms that he was not well and he could hardly write. But I mean, you were always paying us, and so though he was going through a tough time, he was like, we had amazing support from nurses, doctors, and yes, there was pain, but there was the balm, the pain. We had the most amazing set of doctors, amazing set of friends to help us. So I think though the last 11 months were difficult for him and us, but I think the grace of God and all of you here and online really took us through, and we are grateful. That's his last birthday. Any guesses where this is? I know I cropped a lot of the picture. Probably it's a very dumb question from me. Okay, this is in Kabini. There's a reason why I took him to Kabini on his last birthday. He had a stroke in Kabini on 21st of June. And him being him and me being me, both pretty, I don't want to use the word arrogant, but strong in abuse. I said, we're going back to the place where you had your stroke. We had a stroke on June 21st, and October 14th, we were in Kabini, very close to the place he had his stroke. Just to tell that you can't really beat us down. Yes, that was the last birthday which he celebrated in Kabini. That's boating in the Kabini Reservoir. Next. I really didn't want to put this picture up, but this is the Global Tiger Initiative Award, which was happened at our place on 16th of April, 2024. Yes, the cancer had taken a toll on him. But like I said, he still has had his spirits high, and this was the function we had at home. And those were his doctors, the driver, my brother, Sanjay Gobi, the GTI team, everybody down at home, Charu's wife. And we were very grateful to them for this award at home, and it meant a lot to him and to us. Why I come back to this picture is that when I saw him in his bed, after that, he was mostly confined to his bed from April. Somehow I kind of felt that my dad was like a tusker. That's how I've always felt him. You can't chain a tusker. You can chain it, but you really can't chain it, right? You think you've chained it, but you really can't tame it, So for me, he was like a super tusker, unchainable. And that was what we saw there. And he being a scientist, he knew the time had come, though he started to tell me because he probably thought I'd get hurt. But he did tell Charu and a few of his close friends that, you know what, I've done my bit. It's time for me to move on. I've done my job. So he knew it, So in the end, he did pass off peacefully. And the doctors did a great job of keeping him pain-free too. So you can't tame a wild tusker. That was him. You saw him in the GTI picture, but that's not the memory I want you to carry home. This picture of my dad is what I want you to have. This was the last tusker he saw with me. This was in Kabini. I've not seen such a beautiful tusker in the Indian forest for a long while. And I saw this magnificent tusker with him. And surprisingly, I got a magazine. I'm not able to recollect Gaja. Yes. They recently sent me copies home of the latest magazine, one to my house in Delhi and one to Bangalore, where Dad stayed. I certainly don't know where they got the addresses from or who sent it. I'm really sorry. But if I'm not wrong, it's the same Tusker on the page. If I'm not wrong, it was almost like a sign, like you see the Avatar movie and you see signs. It was almost as if this is about a month ago. And I was telling my wife, there's the same last Tusker he saw. How on earth did this Tusker land up on the front page and get mailed to us? It was almost like a sign on what I believe. So that is the last Tusker. That's how I compared him. A super Tusker, not meant to be chained. Wherever he is, I think he's happy and free, after doing his job. Can you play the video, please? Abhishek, it's a video. If you come to the bottom left, there will be a play button. If you open the PowerPoint, the same slide, on the bottom left of the picture, you'll find a play button. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And thank you for having been part of this life. And I mean it on his behalf and my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I don't think
we were very emotional. Over the last 2 hours, we've collectively sort of lived through Dr. Johnsingh's lives. We've been inspired by his life's work, by his message, by the time that we've all shared with him. And this is to thank you all for spending this evening with us to recollect our memories, very cherished memories of Dr. A.J.T. Johnsingh. Mike, thanks very much for delivering that, for sharing all of that with us. It's something that will stay with us, really precious memories. And for the rest of you who delivered such moving tributes, Dr. B.C. Chaudhary, for people who worked closely with Dr. Johnsingh, Dr. Ramesh, Bivash sir, Ms. Srivastava, Ms. Mohanty, Mr. Sajid Sultan, Dr. Gubbi, Dr. Rawat, Dr. Savarkar, Sonali Ghosh, Dr. Chavda, and obviously a CEO. We've been really fortunate to have heard from all of you who've been associated with Dr. Johnsingh for so many years. We'll step away from here with a renewed sense of mission to carry forward the work that he's done and to live up to his ideas. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you all for joining. We do have a condolence book left there. You can write in your notes and put in your words to Dr. Johnsingh. Also, we have some refreshments outside if you can grab as well.
Dr. Asir Jawahar Thomas Johnsingh, also known as A.J.T. Johnsingh to his dear ones, was a conservation stalwart whom we miss. People who knew him cherished his hearty smile, tight handshake, and that incredible field wisdom every time he met them. Inspired by Jim Corbett, A.J.T. Johnsingh